Welcome to Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. We're in an undisclosed location, the man cave bunker of Ben Stowe, and we're talking about speakers tonight. This is where he hides all the good stuff.
Somewhere in the Mediterranean.
That's right, because what better place to be than the Mediterranean when you're talking speakers. So tonight we're going to talk about active versus passive, a big question when you're going to go buy. I mean, like, I'm like such a, oh, give me the amplifier in the speaker, make it easy for me. But you know what? There's probably people that are like, well, much more audiophiles than I that have real big opinions about, oh no, you got to have your amp and you got to have your passive speaker or this or that. So we're going to explore that from a guy who knows everything. That'd be Ben.
Well, hardly everything, but there are some real pros and cons. In a previous episode, we looked at how loudspeakers work, and we had a nice cutaway, a functional cutaway of a loudspeaker. This is a different sort of cutaway. This one's not functional. It's cut and it's done. It's
dead.
It's been bifurcated and game over. So, but it shows us the inside of a loudspeaker cabinet, and it shows us that we have our high frequency device here. We talked about this is the high frequency diaphragm right there. There's that phase plug that we talked about in the previous episode. If you haven't watched it, right after this, go watch it. It's like like Breaking Bad.
Stop right now. Go watch that, and then come back.
Why not? I'm attention deficit. You can be too.
Watch for the Easter eggs popping up on the screen.
You can learn. You can learn to be attention deficit. And down here we have our low frequency driver, and this is what creates our two-way loudspeaker cabinet. And we would simply plug in our cable in the back, and the power coming from the amplifier would connect to these devices, and our speaker, now can make sound. As you can see, some of the considerations for loudspeaker design are the size of the box. As much as you like the convenience, you also have to be able to carry it to your gig.
Right. You don't want to be too heavy.
Right. Can't be too heavy, can't be too big, and can't be too expensive. So some of the compromises loudspeaker manufacturers have to make when making a powered loudspeaker is to take an amplifier and maybe a DSP, and we'll look at some examples here in a second.
DSP?
Yep, digital signal processor.
Okay.
And they have to make these things fit into a box, and they have to be light enough and inexpensive enough for you to want to buy this speaker. So those are some of the considerations that manufacturers struggle with. And right next to this speaker here, we see a powered loudspeaker. By powered meaning the amplifier is built in, passive meaning it's not. You'll hear terms like passive and active, or unpowered and powered. But fundamentally, they're the same except for where the amp is located. In this case, the amp is located in the back of the loudspeaker. We can see there's a power cord coming in. We plug in our signal cable, and then we have a menu. And in addition to our amplifier settings, this also has all of our digital audio processing. And they've put some really juicy features in here, like parametric EQ, delay settings, and some of the things that we're seeing in other outboard DSPs.
Now, if you don't know what he's talking about parametric EQ, there's a great lesson on EQs in another episode.
There you go. That's you see the theme here. You're just going to be watching all night. So.
Right. You're going to have to just put it all together, and then you'll know that you'll be like Dan Brown, and you'll have the whole thing figured out.
Well, and it's funny because we forgot the T-shirt of the week tonight.
Oh my gosh!
So kind of like my wife was watching Breaking Bad, and she could not stop watching episode after episode. I think that's what we're going for here, and we have, by honestly pure coincidence,
the periodic table of something or other.
Yeah, Breaking Bad themed T-shirt. We've got our nerdy T-shirt. So
NERDY.
You bet. Yeah, we've got
and those are actually elements.
They are, absolutely.
That's amazing. Although you could tell me that, and I would believe you.
Yeah,
I cheated to get my through chemistry.
I squeaked through. So
anyway, so back to speakers.
We covered that in the previous episode too. We talked about why hot water freezes faster than cold, and we got into some things with Aristotle and Francis Bacon and chemistry, and hydrogen bonds, and all sorts of fun things.
Before we continue this, I got to go watch some episodes. Clearly,
all right, well, we'll come back in a minute here. And okay,
you already know all this stuff. I have to come. Okay, I'm back now. I think I'm all caught up.
I just wanted to watch you watch me. I thought, my gosh, we're losing viewers by the second.
All right, now what were we talking about? Oh yeah, speakers.
Right, speakers. I told you, attention deficit.
That's right.
All right, so this one has the amp module and the DSP module built into the loudspeaker.
Built right into the back of it.
Yep, and I have an example. This is here we go, right here. Here's the amp module that we see here, and that's what you got.
Look how small it is.
Right, and
it's amazingly small.
Very light.
Like if you look at an amp that you can see like right here, how big that is. Plus, it's pretty deep as well, and then it's all crushed into that little box.
Well, yeah, not just an amp either. They also added the DSP. So
Wow.
there's a digital signal processor, which is this device
So
here.
like all of this has been crushed into that.
Almost, and that's where the pros and cons come in. Again, they had to make it, fit inside the box. They had to make it not affect the acoustic properties of the box because of the cubic space it's taking up, and they also had to make it lightweight and inexpensive enough for you to want to buy this speaker and take it home and use it.
Probably not have a giant box, so you don't have a 12-inch two-way that's a giant box to come in it, because everybody's always like, make it smaller, make it smaller.
Yep, make it smaller, make it lighter, make it cheaper.
Right,
That's,
exactly, and make it louder.
Pretty much defies all the laws of physics.
Yep, yep, exactly. That's what we want.
It is, and engineers, that's their job. Their job is to overcome, the known laws of the universe every day.
And give us what we want.
For us. Now, some of these laws just simply can't be overcome. I mean, and don't get me wrong, technology's come a long ways, and they've done some really amazing things to make this happen. Some of these new powered loudspeakers are just nothing short of stunning, and the evolution is amazing. But something has to give. When we take out this much space and this much weight, and we take out cost, something has to give. So there is a tremendous convenience factor for powered loudspeakers, but there can be a performance loss. You certainly...
Where does that show up, usually?
Well, I think, and here's sort of the gotcha, I think a properly powered, properly processed passive speaker is always preferential over a self-powered loudspeaker. But there's some qualifiers there, properly powered and properly processed. And for a guy like you might say, look, I'm not doing touring shows. I'm perfectly happy with the sound and the performance of this powered loudspeaker, and I want the convenience that I plug in 2 cables, power, signal,
done,
and I'm done. I don't have to carry around a second rack. I don't have to carry outboard equipment. I don't have to understand this stuff. Well, but you should.
For dummies like me, the amplifier is already perfectly balanced to the speaker. I don't have to figure out about matching things or having the right ohms and...
Well, perfectly balanced to the best of the engineer's ability. Again, I can't let that point go that they had to make some compromises. They had to say, well, we're battling against these other considerations, size and weight and cost. But if they simply took this amp and stuck it in the box, you wouldn't want it. You would say, well, that's too heavy and it's too expensive.
It's a big box. Yeah.
Exactly.
Screwed to the back.
But again, they've overcome a lot. Inside here, there's precision-controlled fan cooling, PWM-controlled fans. We do have parametric EQ. We have delay. We have, some crossover settings, some fundamental basic signal processing that certainly makes this good enough for a very broad swath of users to take out into the field. There are some more advanced features in this DSP. Certainly much more advanced functionality with crossover and those sorts of things. Plus the ability to connect it to a computer and program it that way is really nice. Some loudspeakers are getting into like Bluetooth connectivity and those sorts of things that allow you to do that.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'll just say it's a nice feature
More convenience than performance.
I think so, and at least on the ones I've seen so far, But it sort of foreshadows the things to come.
Yeah, it's emerging.
It is.
Especially with like, I heard a discussion about like broadcasting your signal over Wi-Fi. So it'd be like a Wi-Fi receiver that would attach or plug into the speaker and convert it back to audio and go in versus to trying to do just a radio frequency.
Well, Wi-Fi is radio. I have my concerns about that too because latency is a really big issue. Latency is the delay in the signal, as it were. Now it's different from an audio delay, so I'm sorry if I sound like I'm contradicting myself, but engineers say,
it depends.
Well, latency is different from delay, but for all intents and purposes, if that Wi-Fi signal gets interrupted and that packet has to rebuffer, or we have dropped packets, we lose audio.
It's going to have a big effect.
Yeah,
it'd be worse than a or a
it's gonna drop out potentially, and so
equally bad.
Yeah, wireless audio and wireless digital audio, works, but it adds a degree of
risk.
Absolutely. So
especially at loud volumes.
Exactly. Wherever possible, I think running a cable is the best way to go about it.
Okay. So getting back to, sorry about the tangent.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's good.
Getting back to this.
ADHD, I can tangent.
This works.
Yeah.
Right? And so how you make eggs in the morning, you take a pan. No, so we were with the amplifier built in, and give me a couple of examples of like a con that I should consider to having the powered speaker versus getting myself an amp and a pair of speakers that are matched?
Well, the con,
Like an example.
yeah, the con of having a powered loudspeaker is, again, what they had to take out to meet those considerations.
So
for
it's, I mean,
size,
it's not
weight,
as much
cost.
power.
Probably.
Like, you know, what would be some examples of something they might have had to take out to be able to make this a smaller size? So you're going to have the potential to having a smaller powered box.
Right. Some of the big, things are, particularly when you get into lower frequencies, a lot of times they'll go with like Class D or Class H amplifiers, and they'll use switch mode power supplies, which are very lightweight, and they're getting very good, and they're very efficient, and there's definitely a quality gap with Class D amplifiers. Really good Class D
On the
amplifiers.
subwoofers?
Well, in general.
In general, okay.
Really good Class D amplifiers have processing to deal with some of the high frequency artifacts that are created with Class D. Some of the cheap ones don't. It just sort of stands to reason. You get what you pay for. In almost every case.
So then that would show up in a size issue in terms of putting something in a box like this versus being in an amplifier. Like you can only put so good of a unit in here because it has to be smaller. Is that it?
That is part of it. The biggest thing is with the power supply itself, as opposed to the amplifier architecture.
Okay.
Switch mode power supplies, digital switching power supplies are very lightweight, and that's really a good. That's a really desirable feature.
Yes.
But a toroidal power supply, which is a big old chunk of iron and copper, is nice because it handles those low frequencies so much better. It's just
so it's like
stores a ton of power on board.
cleaner.
You have room for bigger capacitors inside to store power, to supply power when it's needed. And I think we have a future episode coming up on amplifier power and those sorts of things. But you might say if you're just kind of getting savvy with electricity, you might say, well, wait a minute. The maximum power I can get out of the wall is 2,400 watts, 20 amps at 120 volts. How can you have a 4,000 watt amp that plugs into that? And the reason is, and we'll cover this in depth in a future episode, but
this is
because
foreshadowing.
Yes, foreshadowing. See, not only do we want you to watch all the back episodes, but the future ones.
Right,
too.
now you can anticipate what's coming up.
I don't want my show to get canceled. So, but the reason is that these power supplies are able to store power and supply it on demand because it's not a constant need for it. It's just a punch.
Yes,
bass notes hit. And
when
things
you
like that.
thump, you need an extra. Well, they call it punch.
Punch.
That's a great thing. 'Cause it's like I've had a sub where I turn it up, and it's like, but it doesn't seem to have that punch to it. Whereas others, it's like it just hits and you feel it, and it's got great presence. So I think I understand that part.
Yeah, it has to be able to store that power, and that takes power supplies that are capable of it, and capacitors that are capable. And these things take room and they add weight. Capacitors don't weigh much, but toroids certainly do. And
so that's an area where you could see it not so much in clarity, whether it be a muddy or low end, but in losing some of the punch because of the amplifier taking up smaller room or having to be in a smaller space in that powered box.
Yeah. Now, again, to be clear, and in fairness to my friends that are engineers at several of the leading audio manufacturers, they've done an amazing job, again, of cheating physics. They've created these power supplies that recharge the power rails so fast. They supply that power. They've become so very efficient, so they make the most use of the power that comes out of the wall. It's not lost to heat. It's not lost to inefficient circuitry and those sorts of things. That there's, and I don't want to turn this into an infomercial for anybody, but I'll say some of these new powered subwoofers hit really hard. Again, do they keep up with their passively powered counterparts properly done? Probably not.
Well, what about somebody in a mobile
it's okay,
application?
yeah.
When we kind of go well, stadium versus a mobile application, you're probably not going to want to be trying to run anything powered if you're doing a big main stage in an outdoor festival kind of thing. Because you're going to need that punch, you're going to need all that oomph to be able to do that. But if you're in a mobile application, even if you're doing a larger venue with, say, 400 or 500 people, so a powered sub with a built-in, a powered sub is probably going to be no one's going to be like, man, I'm missing that. That's just not there.
Yeah, no, you'll there's plenty of it there. And again, to the viewers who are maybe more confused when we started, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'll say, I would have no problem using powered loudspeakers for, some small festivals outside, those sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
Have enough of them. Have enough rigged for the gig, But on the other side, when you look at bigger tours, you don't see too many powered loudspeakers, particularly low frequency. They tend to still have racks of amps and outboard processing. But They also have 20 semis of gear rolling down the road. They have plenty of power at the venues.
And 20 people to haul it in.
At least.
And hook it up.
I've worked shows where there are over 100
Wow.
people loading. And now, that's not to say that isn't a consideration for them either, because semis require drivers and maintenance and fuel.
And they can only handle so much weight.
Exactly. Size and weight and fuel consumption, they're all a big concern. And you're on the road 2-3 years with a tour, that cost becomes exponential as it goes along. So the engineers there are looking for ways to make amplifiers that are in the rack less heavy,
Sure.
more efficiency, more power out of the chassis.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the newer amps are way lighter than the boat anchors I used to haul around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really awesome. Well, let's shift over a little bit and talk about the processing that's built in, because this is probably like the newest feature, isn't it, that they've been starting to add the powered speakers to actually have the ability to process. So what are some features that are typical features besides gain, which you would, before processing I saw that you could have a little gain to go up and down on the back of the speaker. Besides that, what are some of the things that are of interest?
Well, some of the first features that we saw come into powered loudspeakers were things like crossover, where it says, okay, am I being used with a sub? Yes, you are. Okay. Then at 100 hertz, I'm going to drop off. This one allows you to select a crossover point. I can say 80.
Oh, you select a frequency?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And again, it's just going to grow. We're going to see more of this come into stuff like this. But there's some other, I think, convenience features. In addition to some of the advanced features like delay and parametric EQ that, an audio person who understands, and hopefully this is you, understands what they're doing and wants to use those features.
Well, after the EQ video, you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back. Another back episode.
That's right.
There are some convenience features too, where you say, I don't really know what this means. I just know that if I do this, it's better. And for right here at this example, it says tripod. And the reason is when we take loudspeakers and we put them next to surfaces, it changes the response of the loudspeaker. You have things like boundary loading and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So this one says, okay, I'm on a tripod, so I'm going to compensate for that. Or I'm against a wall, or I'm on a floor.
Yeah, no sub.
Right, no sub, tripod, and it also has a monitor setting. When you set this on the floor as a monitor wedge on a stage, it understands that it's against the floor, it has that boundary loading, and it makes compensations for you.
Wow, intelligent speakers.
They really...
It makes up for me.
I'll tell you this, we might get in big trouble here from some friends of mine, but
Here we go, big trouble.
I've seen some of the hidden menus, the engineering menus for what these loudspeakers are now measuring and compensating for, and it is stunning. It's not something that unfortunately the end user can go look and see.
Well, I would probably get in big trouble if I tried to tweak those.
Well, yeah, and you would, but it's just remarkable to see that what this loudspeaker is keeping track of, and how it's making our job easier. So, whereas we maybe lose some performance as opposed to, again, a properly powered, properly processed passive system.
Yep.
The convenience factor and the fact that somebody has done the hard work putting the algorithms and the processing, things like FIR drive and whatnot, into a powered loudspeaker, and all we have to do is plug in a cable and tell it it's on a tripod and it doesn't have a sub. That's pretty sweet.
Well, that's, and for a end user like me, that like I have my application, my show I want to do, and I'm not concerned with like wanting to learn all the nanorhythms of whatever, the fibrillator for flabillator.
I think you made that up.
To make it all work. No, I looked all this stuff up before I started the show.
All right. I believe you.
And then I go, there, it sounds really sweet. I don't want to have to worry about that. I want to be able to put it up and make it be simple and be done with that and then focus on the show. And I think there's a lot of performers and end users that really want that. And so this is really catering to that.
Yeah, I agree. And every now and then I see the debate played out, and we just hashed it out here. We see the debate on the forum as to what's better, and the answer I think is it depends, because engineering is always a series of trade-offs.
Right.
If you have a passive system and you're happy with its performance and you love the sound, then don't sweat it, don't stress about it. Likewise, if you have a powered system and you love the convenience and the performance of that, don't stress. And can't we all just get along?
Exactly.
I think a lot of people, myself included, own both, and we use them for application-specific environments.
Okay. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Which is better, chocolate or vanilla?
You know what? I am weird. I don't know what the deal is. I don't like chocolate.
That is pretty weird.
My wife loves chocolate. My kids like, but my son didn't like chocolate for the longest time.
So vanilla's better.
Vanilla for me is, I'm not a boring person.
It doesn't depend on anything. No. Vanilla is a flavor.
Yeah, it is a flavor.
There should be a campaign for plain foods because
I think so.
too often, too much stuff is added. Oh, we gotta add stuff. No, you don't.
Well, but then again, we're in Minnesota, and I don't know. I come from further south of here originally, and I do love spicy food, and I love spending time in the deep south. Love my sweet tea and my okra and all that. But
I see where you're going with this.
Spice in Minnesota, I don't know. I think there's black pepper. And then there's Minnesota black pepper. They kind of let it stale out for a little bit. It doesn't have the kick of regular pepper.
Well, see, Ben, what you're misunderstanding about the Minnesota palate is how sensitive it is.
Yeah,
we can detect the notes of flavor in a plain potato, of which you've burnt that out in your tongue, which I'm so sorry, because the notes of flavor in a plain potato is amazing.
I think potatoes have no flavor.
See what I mean?
Yeah, my taste buds have been fried by all the southern food I love. So
anyway, that's speakers and potatoes and vanilla and chocolate, and I hope you got a good idea in terms of next time you start looking about either making the move to a powered system or staying with your rack mount system that you may already have. There's trade-offs to everything, and it always what?
It depends.
Exactly.
It depends.
All right, that's Tuesday night with Ben Stowe.